Hey, good morning, and welcome to episode 63 of Talking to Artists. So today I'm really excited to talk to James Patterson. He is an Imagineer, which is such a cool phrase, and he specializes in these really cool kinetic sculptures called prayer machines. So really looking forward to kind of hearing more about his inspiration and how he got started. But before that, just have some really cool personal news I wanted to share. So my son Mitchell just got engaged, and so we're super excited to welcome Morgan to our family. We love her; she's great, and so we're looking forward to expanding our little family. So that'll be super fun. Okay, so I'm just going to see whether or not James is here. Going to jump right in, and it doesn't look like he's quite here yet, so that's cool. A couple of other things happening. It looks like we might be able to do the Riverdale Art Walk August in person in Jimmy Simpson Park, so that's pretty exciting. It's in a couple of weeks, so of course there's a lot of work to be done, and everything's going to have to move pretty quickly. But it is fun to sort of think about actually having a real show in our hometown. On the flip side of that, I was supposed to go to Art San Diego in the beginning of October, and unfortunately that has been postponed until 2022. So. Disappointed to not meet my friends and hang out in San Diego, but also probably a little bit relieved that I don't have to worry about the borders and traveling and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so pretty excited about that. Okay, let me just, doesn't look like we have James yet, but we will kind of continue to wait. What else is going on? September is going to be really busy, so assuming that we can kind of control everything with the Delta variant. I've got the Cabbage Town show that's happening first weekend in September. The one I'm really excited about and working on and we're getting close to is my family garden, the show that I'm doing with my sister. And so it's really starting to come together now with these kind of matching panels of the same sizes and same color palettes, and it's going to be designed so it's like looking out the window into your family garden. And it's really part of it is a story about how our art within our family has always been really nurtured and supported and stuff, which is really important. And it's also kind of about growing ideas and growing off of each other, and also it's just really fun to do a show with my sister. So I'm really excited about that. So that's Helen Utzel. So keep tuned for that. The opening is, oh goodness, I believe it's September 14th. It's a Thursday, either the 14th or the 16th. I can't remember now, at Leslie Grove Gallery. And so that's going to be great. We're hoping to actually be able to have kind of a real opening. If not totally inside, then hopefully we can spill outside into the park. So, which will be great. Okay, don't see James yet, so I'm just going to see where he might be. I know that he is doing his interview today at Spence Gallery. So Spence Gallery, if you guys don't remember, I interviewed Joan Spence a few weeks ago, and she talked about her grand reopening, and so that is today. So if you are in Toronto, please check out Spence Gallery. In Harvard Street, you can go to Spence Gallery to find out all the information, and the open house is running from 4 till I think 8 tonight. So, looks like James is here, so I'm going to just invite him right on. Running out of stuff to say.
There you are.
All right. Hey, how are you?
Hi.
Are you giggling?
Can you hear it?
It's kind of coming in and out. I can sort of hear you. I can see you really well.
And you can hear me too?
I can. I'm good. I'm getting a bit of an echo, but I think we're good. And I can see your amazing machines behind you, which is very neat.
It's a large cavernous gallery, so that's why there's an echo.
Obviously, it needs more of your art in it.
AGO.
Sorry?
It's like one of the rooms at the AGO.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're going to be doing okay then.
This is weird not to
So
see.
you're at... You can't see me?
Well, no, because Lynn has the thing turned around the other way. So she can see me, so she knows what I'm...
Well, that might be I'm also getting almost like a interference noise And I don't know if it's maybe Lynn's being close to the mic or.
Oh.
Sorry?
It is dead quiet in here.
Okay, well, let's try and see what happens. I mean, if it's easier to turn it around so that you can see me, it might be easier for your conversation.
If we turn it around. Can I just do that? Oh, there's Kate. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Hi Lynn.
Does that work better?
No. Hang on.
Oops. Should we move it up so I can see myself? Kate, you look like a regular TV personality.
Well, this is my 63rd episode, so I'm getting pretty good. And almost none of them go seamlessly, so I'm kind of getting used to that now, too.
63rd?
Yeah, can you believe it?
You should be on CTV or something doing social reporting around town.
It would be fun, because I have to say this has been a pretty fun thing to do.
Yeah.
So, it gets you kind of connect with all those people that you usually see at all those art fairs that you don't quite know well enough to just reach out of the blue and say, hey, let's have a chat.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea, great concept.
Yeah, so we'll see how long it takes me to run out of friends and people that are willing to be on my show.
Well, if you've done 63, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, it's interesting now because I'm getting actually people approach me now, and some of these people are, like not from Toronto, but from other countries, and so that's been pretty neat too. Yeah, so
That's fantastic.
I think it's got legs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now I feel like I need to do something with it. Like I need to get it out there to more people so they can kind of see it and learn from all the amazing wisdom that all the guests share, which has been really wonderful. Actually, they've been really candid, which is nice. So let's talk about James Patterson. So I just said a bit of a blurb this morning that you're actually recording in the Spence Gallery, who I interviewed Joan a few weeks ago. And the open house is today from 4 to 8, right?
The beautiful
Yeah, so that'll be...
I mean, she's been going, I think, since 2005 in Toronto. And this is a brand new location she's opened on at 106 Harvard, just at Harvard and Spadina. It's a great neighborhood. And it means something to me. I grew up in this neighborhood. And actually
really?
3 houses down is the laneway that ran behind where I lived for a few years. So then my childhood was just one major street south if you're on College. So it was, I was so excited to hear that she was opening a location right here and that we'd be represented right where I grew up.
That's amazing.
Just walking around this morning,
I know.
It just made me feel like, I just wish I was back in the city living here.
Yeah, I feel that because you're up in Georgian Bay now, right?
It's bizarre, we look out our windows and there's Georgian Bay 25 kilometers straight across to tiny township on the far shore. It's like paradise, but there are times when I just yearn for the city, the streets. Just walking down Robert Street where we parked, and it's a beautiful city, really.
Yeah, I totally get you because we've basically been living at the cottage, and absolutely I cannot complain because it's gorgeous up here and you get to kayak and stuff. But there is something about the energy of the city that I miss, and just the unpredictability of what you're going to run across, and of course the food, I have to say, although everything's closed now anyway, but it's opening now, so that's kind of exciting. So I'm not sure if I lost your vocals or not, but just wanted to kind of really start off with, I think when I first met you, it was a number of years ago now, and I was just so intrigued with the whole concept of prayer machines and where that kind of concept came from and what your inspiration is. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
In a nutshell, I'd been painting for 20 years on my own as an artist, and we were living, that was our means of income. Excuse me. And I just wanted to change for a bit. And long story short, we ended up as dorm parents at a Christian boarding school, an international Christian boarding school in Germany, right in the heart of the Black Forest. It was just heaven on earth. Depending on the humidity in the sky, you could see the Alps looking one direction, and you could see the I think it was the Vosges Mountains in France, looking the other direction. And then we were right at the end of the Black Forest where it came down and joined the Rhine River Valley. So
Holy cow! Sounds
living
gorgeous.
in a little village of 400 people that was first settled like in the 1100s. It was just amazing. But we had 20 teenage girls under our care in a big old 15-bedroom house in the middle of this little village, and it became very stressful for me in short order. I'd been used to working on my own, self-employed, doing what I wanted every day in terms of creation, and now I had a boss and I had a team that I was in charge of, and had to look after this house plus the lives of the girls that were in our care. And in the midst of, and then going to another country and changing everything, and in the midst of all.
And do you speak
No,
German?
it was an English school. It was an English bubble, and unfortunately it was an English bubble because then you didn't learn German. But fortunately it was an English bubble because then it was easy to get by.
So you could function.
And so we were there doing that, and this stress just overwhelmed me at one point, and I found I couldn't pray. I couldn't get the words to pray, and I was distressed about that. But I began wondering, what would my prayers look like instead of sound like? And so I started playing with little bits of wire that were coat hangers and different bits of wire that I found, and making them into these little machine-like looking objects. And then they were doing some renovations in the dorm at the time. And there was little blocks of wood end cuts off 2x4s and that, and so I would stick them in that so they would stand up like little sculptural pieces. And as I did that, it was really interesting. I was able to pray again. My words to talk to God with came back to me, and so I called them prayer machines. Wow. I just thought it was a neat combination of words, a neat image, and.
Well, it's cool. It's cool too that you kind of, you're using a machine to unblock a blockage, right? And so that whole concept is really neat too. And were they kinetic at that point, or was it really just more the fact of maybe channeling your faith through your hands and creating something that was joyful?
Yeah. The other thing was we had to go to a lot of meetings, and I'm not very good at meetings. And so I would take the wire with me and just, like someone sitting there crocheting or knitting, I would just make these wire wheels to put on these prayer machines. And that settled me down a lot for the meetings, made them more tolerable and me easier to live with. But, so they looked, machine-like. And then, I'd seen this in Canada before, while I was growing up and everything. But over there was a lot of old barns and workshops that I saw where they had the old line shaft and pulley drive system still in place, where there'd be one shaft running the length of a larger workshop, and there'd be pulleys on that shaft, and then belts from that shaft would drive other independent machines in that room. And I just liked the way you had this sort of central source of power branching out to all of these different machines that were being run by different operators, through a belt and pulley drive system. And so I began adopting some of that look, the visuality of that into my machines. And then, the artist once I was praying again and sort of feeling more settled, the artist in me prevailed, and I began developing them more as art pieces. And so we ended up.
And so because they're so personal, was it hard to sort of share them with the world or sell them, or?
For me, my art had always been more of a bridge to communicate, a bridge to relationships and a bridge to communication. I like to use it as a way of connecting with people. You have this piece of art between you, and you both have a shared interest, and so then you can begin talking and dealing with the deeper things between people.
Mm-hmm. And so do you still kind of use them as a prayer machine, or is that sort of piece done and you're just continuing that kind of communication? Like, are they still kind of faith-based, or are they kind of?
That's a really good question, because I've thought about that. Excuse me. As they developed, and you would know this too, being an artist, your mind starts, you've taken several steps to create what you're doing, and then you suddenly see a side path. Oh, that'd be interesting to explore down there. So they did begin to diverge from the original intent and the original look. to the point that I was doing almost, very abstract wired doodle pieces, which the Spence Gallery actually, she really likes those pieces and is starting to sell those. But I was fine with that, and I think what I've done in the sort of the 11, 12 years now that I've been doing them in a focused, intentional way is I've just allowed different series to exist. And so I've got, a couple series going that are they're still wire, they still have the same look that they're done with my hand, but they don't have that same intention or purpose behind them. So I don't call all of them. Some of them I call them play machines now, and some of them I have different series. I called one, they were two-dimensional, and I called them circuit boards for a civil society. And it was sort of playing with some of the ideas that are emerging now through AI and different forms of artificial intelligence. And I was just thinking, no matter what we do and develop technologically, there's still the human interaction. The way we're interacting today, as well as the interaction that we have one-on-one with technological devices. And so they were sort of commenting on that. So I call those, the circuit board series. And then out of the one series where I began getting a bit more autobiographical about this neighborhood, actually, like I grew up in the Kensington Market, and then this whole annex neighborhood where there was the old Victorian row houses with this steep pointed roofs and then the gingerbread work in them. I had put some of those houses in some of the larger wall pieces that I had done. Sick Kids in Toronto, the hospital had commissioned a big wall piece, and I had some of these houses in that. And then like myself on a bicycle sort of flying through the neighborhood.
I remember that one.
And then I began
it was beautiful.
Extracting the houses out of them as just single objects. So they're sort of like a commercial piece that I do a lot of them. They're at a low price point, but they're these beautiful little houses that are about 16 inches tall that just reflect the neighborhood that I grew up in. Because you had these old Victorian row houses, and when I was living there, a lot of Portuguese immigrants were coming in, through the late 50s and through the 60s. And a lot of them came from the Azores Islands, and they would paint these houses really bright colors. And I was always mesmerized by them. And I remember this one guy, he painted his house with aluminum paint. There must have been a sale on that day. And this thing glowed like a vision. And I just wanted to capture that. So there's places where, galleries and gift shop type things that are selling, those as individual items. But what's really neat is in April, the Ronald McDonald House in Toronto phoned, and they commissioned one of these pieces that was 6 feet tall for their garden. And when their courtyard garden, and we called it One Home, Many Hearts. And I was just to be able to do it for them. But when I arrived to deliver it, just seeing where the Ronald McDonald House is, and then the very next residential house on the street, and all the subsequent ones are all that same old Victorian row style houses. So it's just so neat to see that connection right there.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. That's a great story. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because Ronald McDonald House and Sick Kids seem like such great and natural places for your work. And I like the idea, or maybe I'm sure it's intentional, but that unblocking kind of concept of, unblocking maybe pain if you're in Sick Kids or things like that, to refining your journey and path to joy and to play and to pleasure and to whimsy and all those things that kind of keep you young and fresh and uplift you.
Yeah, we've actually been blessed to have pieces commissioned by 3 different children's hospitals now, 2 in the States and then the one at Sick Kids. And I just feel really privileged to be able to create special pieces for them.
And do you have to do something different for them to be outdoor pieces?
Well, maybe I shouldn't be saying this publicly, but it's an experiment, so I'm going to...
Well, art is always an experiment. You never know how long things go last.
I'm going to call Ronald McDonald House next spring and see how it survived winter. Although, it's they wanted a freestanding piece, so it's actually movable. So the staff there, the maintenance staff, will be able to put it on a dolly and bring it inside for the winter, which I recommended doing. But I've actually created a few other pieces that I've left outside now at home just to see how the different support materials stand up to the weather and so on. But you know, the bases of the piece themselves, like what they're built upon is steel. So that's fine. And then I have it all powder coated, which, you know, stabilizes it. And then it's just I guess what I'm experimenting with is to see how the different paint mediums that I use and then resin. I wanted to talk to you prior to doing it and couldn't get in touch with you just about some advice on the resin and how it stands up outside, or whether you knew about that or not. But
well, it's funny because I have had a piece that I had outside hanging on my in the back, so just to kind of see really how the sunlight was going to affect it, which seems to be okay. Like I think as long as you kind of, you know, do all your measurements properly, it's held up pretty well. And then I had a piece that was just it just didn't work out. It was a disaster. So it was actually sitting in my garage, and then in the spring I realized, oh, it's been in the garage all winter. So of course it's frozen because our garage is not heated. It's not attached to the house, and it seemed to be fine. I was kind of surprised. I would have thought there would have been some sort of structural flaws in it with freezing and stuff. But I know I do the same thing. I put things out in the windows and outside, and just to kind of see. You know, so you can kind of test it in bathrooms, because a lot of people are concerned about humidity for my stuff. And so I have pieces that have been in my bathroom now for years, and they're totally fine.
One piece I did for, it may have been one of the hospital commissions, I'm not sure, but they wanted to know what kind of heat it would take, I guess because of fire regulations and that. And I had several pieces lined up in front of our fireplace in the wintertime, and I had a thermometer there, and I was testing all different temperatures. They held up. Yeah, they held up.
It's the interesting part, I think, of being an artist too. Like there's the creative part, like you were talking about. There's a creative journey, and your brain goes to a different path, and you do stuff like that. And then the flip side of that is this very technical piece. And both you and I and our art has got that very strong technical component that has to work. Because if it doesn't work, then the whole thing is kind of falls apart. But that yin yang is always interesting for me.
I haven't done any of my moving pieces outdoors yet. And I think there would just have to be some materials changes, because like the pulleys I make for the most part are wood, and then the belts that run them, I use, like, depending on the weight that they're turning, the torque they're using, I use string, although now I've started using more polyurethane round belt, and it's an industrial product, so I'm sure it would do okay. But one of my goals in life is to be able to do a large public sculpture outdoors that did have moving elements to it. And see.
That'd be amazing. And so at what point did they start to move? Like you said, they were always kind of focused. They always looked like machinery, and they kind of felt like machinery. At what point did you decide to actually make them machinery?
No, it was probably within 4 or 5 months of just starting them. Prior to doing these prayer machines in my prior art practice before going to Germany, I had created a number of moving pieces that were wood and painted when I was sort of in my folk art phase, and so I had done.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw you win an award at a folk art festival. I'm like, oh, that's unusual. It doesn't seem like your work.
So I had done moving stuff in the past, but with these prayer machines, and especially working with steel, there's a lot more you can do. It's a wonderful medium to work in. I really love it.
Yeah, and so it would be very cool, though, you can visualize something outside where kids can actually play with them. And I remember as a kid, that was always one of the things I loved about going to the science center, because everywhere else you're told not to touch, but in the science center you're told touch and play and experience. And so I didn't get into trouble when I went to the science center.
At the art fairs that we've been at together, when I have moving pieces there, and boy, sometimes you almost have to pay people to touch the piece, because they see it and they love it. And then I step in and start manipulating it, making it move, and they just light right up. And then I invite them to try. Oh, no, we can't touch it. We can't do that, And it's just, I said, oh, I'm the artist. I made it. I'm giving you permission. Oh, no, we can't touch the art.
Yeah.
It's really quite amusing.
Well, it's nice that people are well trained, though, not to go and manhandle the art. Yeah. And so now you've got your people that you're working on. I saw on your website.
Thank you. Yeah, that's just a
Those are
new
cool.
iteration. I had actually, with one I don't know how it happened. I just cut something off of a piece I was working on that I didn't fit. It didn't work. And it was sort of a bullet-shaped, missile-shaped sort of piece of wire that I bent. And I don't know why I didn't just throw it away, but it was lying around. And one day, with art, sometimes you just have to play. And I just started playing with this thing, and I put a circle on the top of it. I thought, it looks like a head on a body. And then I closed the bottom, and then I sort of put, what could be construed as feet-like or leg-like looking protrusions, and then arm-like. And I thought, oh, that looks humanoid. And I put it on a little block of wood so it stood. And then I just looked at it for a while and sort of got used to it. And then my wife, Lynn put it on our website or something. And a woman who had, just the month before in Santa Barbara, California, had bought a piece. And then she just emailed right away, or did through the Facebook or whatever it was on. And she just said, what is that? I need it. I want it. And so we wrapped it up and shipped it to her. And then I thought, oh, I should do some more. So I started building more of them, and then sort of giving them more curves, more human type shape. And I got looking at old photographs. There was a really short period, about 58, 59, 60, 61, sort of between when people were dressing really formal and then when they started going more into the folk hippie stuff starting in the mid-60s. And there was this really glamorous period, and I was looking at Audrey Hepburn, some of her movie stills and different glamorous shots like that, and I thought, the shapes of the dresses and the way they present themselves and the hats and the scarves, I just thought it's so beautiful. It says something about your inner beauty, regardless of how attractive you are, but it just says something, it draws something out from within you that makes you beautiful. And I just wanted to sort of play with that idea, as well as, those shots, like especially from the movies, they were all done in Technicolor at that time. So the colors were very candy-like. It was just really glossy. And, Frank Sinatra singing in the background. It was just sort of a really cool era. And I just wanted to capture that, I think, with some of these ones, sort of a bit of a fashion feel to them. And I'm still not sure about them. I'm not sure if we launched them too quickly. We've sold a few, and I don't know. I'm still playing. I've still got a bunch of them at home in the studio that I'm just looking at every day, trying to decide. Like I said.
Well, I think it always takes time for people to catch up. Like an artist has a new series or collection, and it always takes people time to kind of live with a new collection, I think, for a little bit.
And then I had machine elements in them. I had the wheels with the spokes and some of the curvy stuff. And I just thought it's kind of, I don't know, there's so I guess sometimes with all art, right, some of it you do for yourself. And then if it translates into something that the public relates to and then starts to purchase, to represent themselves, then you accomplish something. But I don't know, still playing with them. There's I'm never short of ideas, so.
Just time, right?
Yeah,
That's what I find too. Yeah, I always say that I need more play time. It's like I don't know how I never seem to have as much as I want. Although I still enjoy the work I'm doing, obviously. So it's not really a bad thing. Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned was about the color, and certainly I love your little pops of color, and they're always very, like you say, that kind of like candy apple, the joyful, really saturated colors. So so how, maybe you could talk to me about your color palette, but also actually how you integrate the colors physically. Like, what's your process for integrating them into your pieces?
As I worked on them, because in my previous work prior to going to Germany and then starting these prayer machines, I'd been I guess I'd call myself a colorist, very strong with color. I always liked a lot of color. And I liked, fairly pure color, almost like out of the tube, but, obviously mixing and changing, but I really loved color. And I knew.
Yeah, me too.
Say again?
No, I was going to say me too. Like, I like sort of that really pure, solid, true color. And I know that you can kind of mix other colors, but I kind of like the pure
and
color.
That was one thing that always attracted me to your work. I mean, just walking down one of the aisles at a big art fair and you see Kate Taylor stuff, and you think, wow, it's just the enjoyment of the color. It speaks to you. And I just knew color was inevitable with these. Like, there was a really beautiful almost pen and ink like quality to just doing the straight black wire. And there was, such fine detail in a lot of them, but I knew color was inevitable. And I remember with one of the pieces, I just put one red circle in it, like one of the circles I had. I filled it in with something, painted it red, and I think it was at one of the Toronto shows. Yeah, because the lady that bought it was from Pont Hill, so it was in Toronto. The artist projects, she just gravitated to it right away. And then from then I just kept adding more and more color until, the color sort of now is becoming really big. I'm actually working on a commission right now for a Toronto couple who live in Denver, Colorado. And they have one of my big standing pieces now, but they wanted another one. But the thing they said was they wanted something more solid. And I've been going in that direction already in my mind, so I saw this as a wonderful opportunity. But I'm using, larger areas of flat space, geometric shapes in the piece itself, which will then, of course, allow for even more color expression. So I'm enjoying that, and the process itself is I simply is it right to give away all your secrets, or is that?
I don't know. I say though, I just loved your recent Instagram with the drill, like twisting the wires. I'm like, that's brilliant.
I think that one was twisting wire. I just, that's an easy process to do. You just get two strands of wire, you fix one end, you put the other end in your drill, and you just spin it for a while. But with the color pieces, I actually use a heavy gloss gel, acrylic gel, and I back whatever it is I'm wanting the color in with painter's tape, and I just paste in the gel very thin, and it dries in 12, 15, 20 hours, and it's translucent. And I put the color on from the reverse side, from the back side. And so that's the only difficult part sometimes, especially when you're blending and mixing, you're sort of doing everything in reverse. And so you have to imagine what it's looking like in reverse, because when you turn it around, then you see it through the gel. That's how you want it to look. And then I back paint it with a primer paint or a gesso, so that the light's reflected back through the color from the primer.
From the gel.
I put a few layers of daisy primer on, and then I actually coat the back with a charcoal gray automotive paint that just gives it the whole back side a finished look. It looks complete. And then on the front side, then I use resin the way you do, and it just gives it more gloss and more stability. It makes it a harder surface, and I mean, some people say it looks like stained glass, which I'm not. I mean, I don't want it to look like stained glass as such, but I think that's the only thing they can relate it to. But it just gives you these nice glossy blobs of color.
Sorry.
That.
Yeah, like I can totally see the stained glass kind of look, especially if you're looking at it from a distance, right? Because because of the fact the light comes through, and you've got the colors are very stained glass colors too. But when you get closer, definitely it's a different experience. It feels more enamel-like somehow. I like custom cars, and especially when they take like the sort of the classic looks from the late 50s through the mid 70s, and they restore them, but not to original condition. They sort of restore them to really good condition, perfect condition. But then they give them these paint jobs that are just 20 times better than an original would have ever been. And they're layering, like they do the candy colors, like the reds or the greens, the emerald greens, or the deep blues or purples. And then they just put the 18 or 20 coats of clear coat on them, so they just look wet all the time. And I love that look, and I think that's something I'm sort of trying to bring in, especially to my more recent work, and especially when I'm painting right on steel instead of onto the onto the heavy gloss gel, because the steel having a really smooth surface, then it doesn't leave any texture in the paint. And then when you clear coat over that with the resin, it just looks wet all the time, and I just love that look. Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, I love your pieces too. Like I'm always really attracted to them. They're super fun. And so you were talking in one of your things too that you have like a crew of people that kind of help you out with some of that stuff. I know you're obviously Lynn is your studio manager, your office, your videographer.
Lynn, other than creating the work itself, Lynn does everything. So the work would never leave the studio if it wasn't for her. So if we're doing shows, like big art fairs in the States, she does all the border crossing stuff, all the contracts for the shows. She does all the interaction with galleries. We have a good number of galleries now. She set this call today, this podcast. Set it all up through her. She does all of that, and she's my muse. But and then also all the social media stuff. So she's wonderful. I have a gentleman that makes the round wooden pulleys for me. I was making them, but he's a retired guy, and he's a wood turner with lathes, and he makes so many so quickly. And it's just, so I just give him dummies of what I want. I just say I need 20 of these and 20 of these and 20 of these and 50. So I have a great big drawer of all these different sized pulleys that I can then just put into the pieces as I'm working and don't have to stop. And then, people that were making the wire rings for me. I mean, I make those too. During the winter, I'll sit and watch hockey and make the rings that way. But you sort of need people doing some of the other work.
Yeah, I think you get to a point too, like we were just saying that if you don't have enough time to play, then you don't have enough time to build your kind of art practice. And there definitely are things that once you figure out what the pillars look like and how big they are, then there's no real value for you to have to be able to personally do them all, right?
I was watching one of these guys that speak to corporate events, to sort of inspire people and everything. And the point he was making at one point was, you can only pedal the bicycle so fast, and then you can't pedal it any faster. And you've got to find different ways of doing more. You can only do so much yourself. And then at a certain point, if you want to go to the next level, you've got to have other people involved doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's hard to sometimes figure out how to delegate or who to delegate to or what to delegate, right? Like right now I'm kind of thinking like, I'm definitely at that point. But of course, right now I'm living in the middle of nowhere, so that's not going to happen until I get back in the city, right? But it's, or until my husband retires, that's the other thing.
Yeah, this whole COVID season has been an interesting challenge for how you rethink how you do what you do, and especially when it comes to the sales end of things. But with the galleries opening up again in the middle of June, and then hopefully the big art fairs will be opening up again, it'll be good. I think it'll be good to be able to get back out and interacting with people and doing stuff that way.
Yeah, I agree, because I think both your work and mine too, there's something about getting that visceral reaction from people and that joy and that happiness that you kind of, it feeds your soul, right? Like it feels great. I always feel so energized after those shows, even though they're physically exhausting.
Yeah, and the great people you meet. I mean, that whole circle of people that you built up around the Toronto, artist project. Your sister coming, and then there was a bunch of, Lori Ryerson and Mike, and just a whole circle of people, and then you sort of tap in and you realize, this is my tribe. These are, we may not talk every day or even every month, but when we're together at shows or whatever, you realize these are the people that do what I do, think the way I think, in terms of what they're creating and how they're living, and it's a very positive thing to be part of.
Yeah. Well, it's also just so nice too to be able to have a conversation with somebody about, I don't know, different types of red and how you use red and which reds you like, which most normal people would totally not care about, and then you realize I've spent half an hour talking about red.
and which galleries that work for you and which ones don't, and which fairs work and which ones don't. And,
I think that part's really valuable too, and because of course different shows have different audiences and have different people that are going to be attracted, and so I often have shows where it's kind of like, it's not a good show for me because I'm abstract, but I know a lot of other artists who do really well at this show. So, talk to them or kind of, obviously, ultimately, fundamentally, you got to make your own decision. But it is nice to know that you've got this whole group of people that will kind of help and give feedback and updates, which is nice. Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing those people in real life. It'll be good. So I love the phrase you use on your website that's an Imagineer. And it's funny because when I first read that, I thought, oh, maybe James is an engineer and turned artist, because a lot of people are, you know. And it's almost like the way you work and the way you approach things and the mechanicalness, it almost felt like such a natural fit, but you're not,
No,
right?
no, I didn't train professionally as an engineer. I certainly, as a child, just progressed from playing with my bike to playing with my motorcycle to playing with cars to now doing mechanical art. But actually, when my first sort of good job in high school, after school job, not delivering papers, was working at it was called the Norfolk Co-op, and they basically had a big machine shop where they fixed tractors and farm equipment. And I was 15, got in there, and I worked there for I think all my high school, like 4 years after school, and then all summer long I would worked all day in the shop. And it's just amazing what you learn about mechanical processes, working with the mechanics and working with sometimes a piece of farm equipment would come in and people would basically say, well, we don't know how to fix this, we've just got to figure it out, there's nothing in the manual, because a farmer had run over a big stone or something with it, and you had to figure things out. And I realize now that's really paid off for me. When I sort of envision, especially the larger standing pieces that now are up to 8 feet tall, I sort of imagine them, and I think this is how I want it to look. This is in motion. This is what I want to have happening. And then I sort of have to then begin working backwards, reverse engineering, to figure out, well, how do I get it to do that? And so it's good. It's good always being involved in that kind of stuff as a young person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also good for young people to be involved in things that use their hands as well as their brains. And I do think there's something very satisfying about creating something with your hands, and at the end of the day, you can see what you've done. You can see the visual accomplishments.
Yeah, very much so.
And so you've obviously been pretty much an artist then, sounds like your full life, for most of your career then.
The day after
I
started. So the day after I was born, I think I started.
Yeah. But at what point, what point did you kind of determine, yes, this is going to be your career path, this is your business, you need to now look at it as a business versus just an output?
Yeah, I did a fine arts degree at university simply because I just wanted to, my whole high school, I didn't have a very good high school career. And I would just come home after school every day, go to my job at the farm equipment place, and then spend the evening making art. I sort of was a conscientious objector when it came to homework. And I went to university basically because I'd seen a show in the town we lived in then of the art professors at Waterloo, and I just thought, oh, I like the vibe I'm getting. And so I applied. That was the only university I even applied to. And I got into the art program there. And then I thought, well, you got to do something afterwards. So I did a teaching degree and I taught art for 5 years. It was really neat. I got into a small private Christian school in Oakville, and they had just started the school the year before. So I was hired as the art teacher. And a funny little story that the principal told me later, he had a stack of resumes on his desk like this. And he said, yours stood out because it was handwritten and it had a little cartoon on the top corner of you standing there holding a can of paint with a brush. And you'd never do that today, would you? You'd hire someone to help you write your CV and all of that, your resume. But I just thought, this is who I am. And he said, your resume just stood out because there was a hand-drawn picture there, and I thought, I want an art teacher. He's doing art.
It's an art teacher.
And he was a really interesting guy, but he just pointed me down the hall, and he said, there's the art room, I don't want to hear from you. It was basically you do what you want to do and get it going. And so I started the art department for the school. And at one point, they were adding a high school class every year. So the school, when it opened, was grade kindergarten to grade 8. And then the year I joined them, the second year, they'd added grade 9. And then every subsequent year, they added another high school year. And at one point, I was teaching all the art for the school from grade 1 to grade 8 or to grade 9 or grade 10. And then they brought in another teacher to do the elementary more, and I was then developing the high school program. But I'm still in touch. I'm still in touch today with kids that were in my classes then, and they, I've always been surprised the number of them that went on to art careers of their own, mainly like in teaching or things like that, but all art related. But we had a lot of fun, and and you want to know how I got it? But I was going home every night after school. I mean, the other thing I didn't do was lesson plans, and so because every night I was just making my own art. And then Lynn and I took 6 months off to travel around the world after we'd been teaching for I'd been teaching 4 years, and she'd been teaching 3. And we ended up at a place in England. I mean, we planned it, but it was a study center called L'Abri. And it was been started in the 60s by a Christian philosopher called Francis Shaffer. And his basic idea was that he'd gone over to Europe after the Second World War in the 1950s as a missionary. And what he found was that because of the horrors of the war, people had lost their belief in God. They just believed, if there was a God, how could this have ever happened? And he believed that the Bible provided honest answers to people that were asking honest questions. And growing up, I'd heard about this place and everything, but someone had encouraged me to go there. And right after I'd finished university, I went for 3 months on my own, and then came back and then did teachers college and started teaching. And then Lynn and I just felt we wanted to go together. So we traveled, we took time off, traveled around the world, visiting friends from university and different things. We did that for 4 months, or 3 months, and then we landed in England for a 3-month term at this L'Abri. And she was, studying various things she wanted to study, and it's an independent study center, but you meet with tutors and whatnot. And then half the day you work, like you look after the gardens or clean the place or do whatever. And I was fixing cars. And I was looking at a lot of, he was a really interesting guy in the sense that he really opened up or challenged the evangelical world to start looking at art. Because they basically, with the Reformation, they'd throw in all the Catholic art, Catholic statues, and churches, in the Protestant tradition were plain. There was no real strong visual tradition. And yet I felt this really strong visual urge within me. And yet I had what I believed, was a legitimate, viable faith in a creator God. And so I was trying to mesh the two together. And I remember doing a study, and he was talking, it was Art in the Bible, I think it was, but he was talking about this verse in Exodus 31, where Moses is having the tabernacle built for the Israelites in the desert. And God said, he says, well, how do I do it? I don't know what to do. And God says, I've given you Bezalel, which was the name of a man, and Oholiab, and I've filled them with my spirit to create artistic designs. And it was like a light bulb going off in my mind. I realized God's given us his spirit to do things, and he's given me his spirit to do art. And at that point, I really felt it, became like a calling. And so we continued on our way, and I'd signed a contract to go back to the school for the next calendar year. But I really believed at that point that I was going to make my living as an artist, in a vocational way, pursue art as a vocation. And so I went back and taught 1 more year, and then left teaching. And so September came. I started working in the extra bedroom in our apartment, creating art. And Lynn was back teaching until December, and then she left because our first child was due in January. So by January of '89, we were both out of teaching and home alone. I was doing art, and she was raising, the beginnings of our family. And we've just gone up until the time, that was in 1988. And so from then until 2008, when we went to Germany, when I just felt I needed a break from the art, I just wanted, I'd been 20 years straight at it. And I wanted, just in my relationship with God, I just had sensed, I basically said to God, look, I want some changes. I want my life renovated in some way, my character renovated further. I believe there's more. And that was when, a series of wonderful, I call them circumstances or God incidents occurred that landed us in Germany, and boy, I felt that was like graduate school in character development for me. A lot of things came to the surface in my life that just had to be let go of and washed away. And I believe God, as a gift, gave me the inspiration for these prayer machines, but this whole new style of art, this whole new way of doing things. And the joy for me has been too, like I remember going to the first artist project show and walking through it and thinking, that was me 20 years ago, that was me 15 years ago, that was me 10 years ago. Like I saw every genre of art there that I had worked my way through. And then with these prayer machines, I feel that God had given me something fun that was truly my own. Like I'd found my own voice, and that certainly played out. I mean, people that see the work say, "Wow, we've never seen anything like this." And who do you compare yourself
but it's
to?
Also, it's also cool though that you kind of through listening to God and having that voice, that you kind of found your own vocation. But given the fact that you only taught for 5 years and you're still in contact with those students, tells me too that voice was also going through you to other people to inspire them into these amazing careers as well, which is pretty phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll tell you, there are times in my life, and it happened, just a month ago, one of my former students came up. I mean, like, he's in his 50s now, and I knew him as a high school kid, and he's been really successful at what he's done, really creative, and he was the kind of kid that I don't think he'd ever read a book in his life. And, it just was all hands. He needed to work with his hands. So school wasn't his thing. But he went on to become very successful in a really creative business that he created on his own. But, when he was just talking to me about, I remember, you doing this in the classroom, and I remember you saying that, and we were all laughing, and we had such a great time, and the way you touched our lives, and this and this and this. And there are times when I get a little pain in my heart, and I think, should I have stayed at teaching? And given my life to influencing, students and young people every day. But I don't know that, I think the idea of it is great. It's like, wanting to be a professional hockey player because you see them play for 60 minutes twice a week, but you don't want the rest of it that goes with it. And the system itself and planning and all of that stuff, it just wasn't me. And
But also, if your kind of energy and your joy is kind of starting to be resentful of the teaching because you want to do your own thing, I suspect it just wouldn't necessarily have been the same thing anyway, right? Like I think sometimes you just know when it's time to move on to something else, even though it's been amazing and great. There's a party that kind of knows it can't continue to always be amazing and great.
Thank you. That's very, very consoling. Thank you.
So we're literally almost out of time. So I know, so fast, huh? So I like to end my my interviews with like if time, money, everything was no issue at all, what would your big hairy ass goal be?
Like I said, I'd really love to have the resources, the time, this place to build something that was just monumental, that moved, that just you saw people taking their pictures in front of it in all the travel magazines on airplanes. Just not for my own edification or to make me famous, but just for the satisfaction of doing it and seeing it done. But I'd also like to, and I think I'm seeing this. I'd like to think I'm seeing this because of feedback I've gotten. But I'd like to see people recognize and interact with. I guess through my art, I'd like people to see the redemptive nature of who God is, and his obsession, his obsessive love for us, his desire to have a relationship with us on a very personal, individual level. And I just hope that through my art, through the joy and the delight that I try and express through it, that somehow people would be awakened in their lives to the redemptive nature of who God is.
That is an amazing end to this interview. Thank you so much. It's been really fabulous talking to you, and good luck at the opening tonight. I wish I could be there, but I've got my family here at the cottage, so I couldn't make it. But yeah, have a great time, and I look forward to seeing you at the next show.
Maybe next February at the Better Living Center, we might all be there together.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
This was really enjoyable, Kate, and it was wonderful to see you again.
It was great to see you too. All right, thank you so much. And coming up next week, we've got Richard Sturgeon, who is also a sculptor, so that will be kind of interesting. And then Denise Busman-Pilger, who is the artist abroad. So a lot of her stuff is inspired by travel, which will be kind of cool too.
I think a year from now, you're going to be everywhere with your podcasts.
I hope so. That'd be fun. All right, well, have a great time. And I got to shut off so I can make sure I can save it. So have a great day. Say hi to Joan for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.